So we talked about 3 graphs. And now, talk about the difference between 1 and 3 and how that we don't realize how we're presenting ourselves. This is basically the gap between 1 and 3 for your study guide, is that we just don't realize how we're actually presenting ourselves. Now, over on a part of your profile, and I want you to be able to do this for your study guide. It says, for each of the 4 behavioral traits, give the following. And this is on your study guide. Have you guys received your study guide yet, or will you get it at the end of class? Okay. Since I just got here late because of the truck. Honestly, I came around the corner down here, and a truck had turned the corner, and the bed of the truck had come off. I mean, did you see it? I mean, and so it was sitting crossways in the road. But then what complicated it was another truck tried to pass it, and so now the entire all of University Drive was blocked because of these 2 trucks. Because a second truck couldn't get around it by the time I got there, so it was kind of a mess. So I'm a little behind on whether or not you've got study guides and that sort of thing. So for your study guide, it says for each of the 4 behavioral traits, give the following. Number 1, give 2 tendencies. Number 2, the 2 action plans to offset those 2 tendencies. And so a real key thing that you want to do is you want to begin to put together an action plan so that you are in fact doing something about these tendencies that you don't like. Because what you'll see, over on your profile, and I don't recall what page it's on, but on your profile there's a particular page where you go in and you mark off these words that describe you, these high and low words that describe you. And so you're gonna find that, hey, there's some of these things that are pretty scary to me. I don't necessarily like these words being used to describe me. And so you say, okay, what's my action plan to do something about that? And then you want to know 2 desirable environments. What are 2 desirable environments that you tend to like? And we're going to go over some of this in a minute. And 2 things to make this person more effective. So you see page 7 of your personal profile system for that, unless they've changed the page numbers. I notice that the profile is totally different on the outside than it is on this time. So let's talk a little bit about D's. We're going to kind of go through these, and I'll answer some of this information for you along the way. Of course, D stands for dominance. People who display dominant behavior tend to shape their environment by overcoming opposition and challenges in order to accomplish results. Now, most of this you'll find if you'll open up to the page with all the squares on it. Let me get my profile here so I'll know where to direct you. Like I say, they change these things sometimes, so I'm not sure all the pages are the same. But if you'll notice, let's see, on page 7, this is where you find all this information. You can turn there and kind of have this beside you in your notes as we go along. So D's overcome, and that's really interesting. They overcome the environment. They overcome obstacles. They are the kind of people that says, we can beat this, we can do this, I can face this challenge. And they are also people who like to get immediate results. They like to cause action. They like to make things happen. They like to accept challenges, and they make quick decisions. We talked about the fact that D's are defiant. See, D's will question the status quo. Now, I am never bothered by having D's around me. A lot of pastors, man, if they get a D around them, they're basically going to run them off because they're so threatened by the fact that these people will challenge them. Here's what they don't realize is that D's are fiercely loyal, and that their loyalty does not prevent them from challenging you, though. See, to an S's are fiercely loyal, but their definition of loyalty is, I do not challenge you. I won't challenge you. So with an S, if you try to be objective with an S or challenge them, you're against me. You're taking sides against me. With a D, it's like, if you don't challenge me, you probably don't care much about me. And so D's will question the status quo. And they will take control. You know, D's kind of live by the motto, lead, follow, or get out of the way. And, if you'll lead me, I'll follow you. But if you're not going to lead, I'll take over. And, what's interesting is D's don't necessarily do that for the reasons that you would think, Again, you pass these judgments about, okay, why do they do this? Well, they just want to be in control. No, they want results. And so it's not about being in control. It's not even about being the boss. I could care less about if I'm the boss. Everywhere I've ever worked, I've been a great team player, as long as we were getting results. But the day we stop getting results and I start giving objective input and they won't listen, then I'm not happy anymore. Because to a D, the proof is in the pudding. You got to get the results. D's don't mind managing trouble and solving problems. So, a D, really, the kind of job that a D would enjoy, just wade into something where you multitask, where you got challenges around you all the time, and it doesn't bother you that you got to help people work out problems. This kind of stuff. That's just part of getting to the results that you get. Now, that doesn't make the D stronger than somebody else. It just makes them more comfortable in those environments. Now, D's are the people in your organization who actually thrive on the changes that are going on today. And they see those changes as personal challenges. See, that's the reason D's embrace change, is because change represents a new challenge. S's and C's don't particularly like change not because they're incapable of change, but because they view it different. They give change. See, to a D, a change means, hey, we're going to find a better way to do this. To an S or C, it means, you mean I'm doing it wrong. You see the difference in how that perspective, it's just the difference in perspective that determines if it motivates you or demotivates you. And so, the D says, hey, great, man, we're going to do it different. It must be going to get better, And so I've got a challenge here. And so they accept it as a personal challenge. If you're a D leader, you have to be careful because you could introduce too much change and just make everybody around you absolutely crazy. So, one of the things that D's fear is they fear the loss of control in their environment. D's don't have to be in charge, but they have to have the sense of being in control of their environment. You will find that there are people who feel like that the environment, that they have no control over the environment. S's tend to feel this way. But then there are people who feel like they do have control over the environment. And D's tend to feel that way. So the D doesn't have to be in charge, but they have to have the sense of being able to take control of their immediate environment. For example, if you're managing a D, you cannot micromanage a D. Micromanage is where you try to manage every detail. With a D, it's like, if you're going to stand over my shoulder, just do it yourself. If you want me to do this, just tell me what you want, leave me alone. If I have got any questions, I'll come back and check with you. But now here's one of the real things that D's really fear is being taken advantage of. D's are really afraid of being taken advantage of. And so you'll threaten a D quicker by feel like you're taking advantage of it. For example, here's kind of the way I approach life. It's like, you can tell me that you're going to try to beat me at something. I don't care. You can tell me you're going to do something better than me. I don't care. You can tell me there's a better way to do it than I'm doing it. I don't care about that either. It just show me. Let's do it. If you say there's a better way to do it, I'm fine with that as long as you can show me what it is. If you can't show me what it is, then you're just being critical. Pretty simple. Or you can say, something, I'm going to beat you at this. It's sort of like, may the best man win. Let's go. Let's dance. Let's do it. And that's not a problem. That is not a personal thing. So D's really kind of enjoy those things. But what a D won't tolerate, they will tolerate competition. They will not tolerate you trying to take advantage of them or trying to take something from them. And, I told you about the conflicts I had with my kids growing up. It's like, my kids could really get anything they ever wanted from me. If I had the money or the resources to get it, the honest truth is they could get anything they wanted, unless they tried to get it by manipulation. And the minute they tried to get it from manipulation, it was sort of like, okay, It's the principle that has now become the issue. And once the principle becomes the issue, when you're dealing with a D, you're going to lose. Because until you can back up and stop making him feel like you're trying to take advantage, then you've got a hostile environment. So they fear loss of control of their environment, not necessarily the people, but of the environment. And they fear being taken advantage of. And these are factors that someone with high D will work hard to avoid. You'll also notice that people with high D behavior will come across as being very self-confident and decisive. In fact, they're great in a crisis situation because they can and will make decisions quickly, and they're not afraid to accept responsibility for those decisions. Some of you might be saying, well, they don't always make the right decision. Well, we'll get to that later. Now, every behavior has possible limitations that go along with it, and not any one behavior is perfect. And those of you who have high D behavior, you might think about, okay, what are some of the challenges that tend to face you? Maybe like feeling like you have a lack of concern for people, impatience, moving forward too quickly, and again, these things have nothing to do with the motives. And see, that's where we get hung up. When people challenge us about some of these traits, instead of just saying, I'm uncomfortable with this behavior, they say, this is what you mean by this, or this is why you're doing it. These really will come out strong against you if you judge them. They don't mind you criticizing them, but don't pass a judgment. So let's talk about I's just a little bit. I tends to stand for influence or inspiration. People with influence dimensions of behavior also like to shape their environment, but they do it by persuading and influencing others as well as by building alliances. For example, if a D walks into a situation, he's really not going to try to persuade. He's just going to say, this is what it is. This is what we're going to do. Let's do it. An I is going to come in and really try to bring alliances and persuade people through influence, which to a D looks like manipulation. But it's not necessarily, you know. Again, you can't go to judgment there. They like to be involved with people and make a favorable impression and generate enthusiasm. They like to entertain and participate in groups. So this is a person in the organization who always has time for other people. If they're in a job that requires them to be behind a computer all day, to not have interaction with other people, it won't be long till you'll see them hanging out at the water fountain in the restrooms and finding ways to talk to other people. Now, this means that I's are going to have certain fears, like they're going to fear not being liked. So many times an I's weakness, whereas a D would just go ahead and make a decision, even though they wouldn't be liked for it, but they know it's the right decision. The I might be afraid to make the decision because if I make the decision, people won't like me. They'll have social rejection or disapproval or the loss of influence. Now, see, there's a time when that's a strength. There's time when it's a weakness. Because the I would be more likely to get the people involved in the process and do it through influence. But what if something's got to happen right now? Then it becomes a weakness. If you've got time to work through those people things, then that's a great strength. The D might not take the time to work through all those people things. He would just say, we've got to get it done, boom, 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 boom. And that's all right when you're under time restraints. But it's not all right when there are no time restraints. People with I behavior are easily recognized as being very enthusiastic, charming, social, persuasive, emotional. They're the ones that kind of tend to be up and down and on an emotional level. When I do this and I'm doing training seminars out somewhere, I always, with the eyes, always have a lot of fun with the eyes, and they don't mind. They're very comfortable. But like if you're in a room and you want to find out who the eyes are, just look around and see the ones that have bright colors. And if it's women, they'll usually have on big earrings. And it's just according to what their secondary trait is, you know. And so when you learn to do this, and just like with the eye, with pretty much every behavior pattern, you get to where you can just kind of spot them by the way they dress. And you're going to be pretty right on, particularly if you get to see them interact any at all. You're going to find out real quick like. And so, with the eyes, you can have a lot of fun and show people how accurate this particularly is. I was doing a seminar in Winnipeg, Canada, and I was talking about the eyes. And actually, there was one of the secretaries did not want to come to this because in most things that teach about behavior, they make eyes just look like goofballs. And eyes are not goofballs. They have incredible skills, creative skills, people skills that you really, really need in every organization. But actually, in most environments, people try to make eyes just look like they're goof-offs, and that there's just something wrong with them. So this secretary did not want to come. And so the person that was hosting this assured him, said, if you go to this guy's seminar, you'll leave feeling better about yourself. And so, I was just talking, and she did, and, she felt kind of comfortable with being an eye. She started finding value with having people skills and started seeing how that contribute to the organization, her creativity and that kind of stuff. But I was talking about just some of the things that eyes would do. Eyes lose things. If you got much eye, you lose stuff. You lose your keys, you leave stuff laying around, and all this kind of stuff. But let me just go ahead and tell you this for eyes. It's really not because you forget. It's because when you think about it, you don't do it right then. That's really why eyes forget. And the reason eyes don't do it right then is because there might be something more fun that you could be doing. You always remember. It's just whether or not you take action when you remember. And it's going to be based on the fun factor usually. But I was talking about how eyes lose their cars in parking lots. You can always tell an eye at the mall. You just wait till Christmas time. You go down to the mall out here, and man, you'll see these eyes. They got on bright colors, and they got bags in their arms, and they're just kind of out in the parking lot with this dazed look, like, I'm pretty sure I drove here, Now, an eye will remember things about people, but they won't remember details. Why? See, which proves they don't have a bad memory. They're remembering what they value. And eyes value people things. So anyhow, I was talking about all this stuff. And this lady actually did start having value. Because, man, she started realizing, that my strength of my organization is that I get cohesiveness between the people. I am an influencer, and I help persuade people without offending them, have a lot of creativity. So she really started feeling good about herself. But she called me one day. She said, I just had to call you about this. She said, because some of the stuff you said about eyes and their tendencies, matter of fact, I think I even used an example, but that eyes would get talking to people when they're walking out to the parking lot, and that's part of why they lose their cars. They're talking to somebody, and they walk to their car, and then they go like, no, wait a minute, what door did I come out of? And so, and she said, well, I felt like you were just trying to be funny when you did that. She said, but I got this story for you. She said, I live about 3 blocks from the church where I attend church. She said, we came home church Sunday. She said, came home, fixed dinner. She said, I got ready to wash the dishes. And I walked over to the kitchen sink, and right at the kitchen sink, there's a window that goes out to the driveway. And she said, I looked out there, and our car was gone. And she said, man alive, she said, immediately. She said, we called the police. They came. Somebody stole our car. And so we start looking for the car. And she said, what actually happened was I drove the car to church. And coming out of church, I started talking to somebody, and I walked past my car, so I just walked on home. And because, in good weather, she would walk to church sometime. So she just thought that was hilarious. But the great thing was that she was able to laugh about it and not feel like, oh, this means I'm just some kind of goofball dummy that can't remember anything. Because she was able to say, well, the truth is I do just value people and interaction with people more than I do details. And that's all right. I need to work on this, and, obviously, but still it doesn't mean something really, really bad about me. So people with eye behavior, they're easily recognized, as I said, by being enthusiastic, charming, socially persuasive, emotional. But there are limitations. These limitations may include impulsiveness. It's interesting. A D will make a quick decision, but Ds tend to make that decision on instinct, past experience. It's like A D just kind of goes, past experience. Let's do this. Let's go for it. And so that's good. Now, when an I makes an impulsive decision, it tends to be more subjective. And so it's not really based on past experience. It's based on feeling like everybody's going to be happy and that they're going to be approved and they're not going to have rejection. So their impulsiveness is more subjective and tends to give them trouble. They struggle with organization. So that means if you're an I, you have got to work on and use more organizational tools. Honestly, when I speak, I'm usually prepared enough that if I were to lose my outline, it wouldn't really matter. Because most of the time, I've thought this thing through, I have prepared, and I could walk in and really, somebody in the parking lot could find my outline and they would realize that I pretty much went through it just like pretty close to the way it was on the outline. But now, if an I didn't have an outline and got enthused about one particular part, they would tend to stay on that part and lose touch with where their goal is. So if you're an I, it's not that you can't organize yourself, because I know some I's that are incredibly organized. The key is, will you use the tools? Like if you know you're an I, you should have one place in your house where you hang your keys. And when you walk in the door, you should always put them there. But you know what almost every I does invariably? They walk through the house, and at some point they stick their hand in their pocket and just toss their keys down somewhere. And then they spend an hour looking for those keys. So if you know you have these tendencies, manage. Put your hook by the door, and every time you walk in, hang your keys on that hook. And you'll do it just out of habit. If you know you're going to go speak, have an outline. Use time management tools. And what you'll do is you'll harness your creativity in a way that will make you far, far more effective. Sometimes we tend to think that using those tools will actually limit us, but they don't. They really free us. I struggle with follow through. I have a tendency to start things and not follow through. But you say, well, Jim, I don't know if I can ever overcome that tendency. That's all right. Build a team. Get in a team where other people are better at the follow through than you are. And you take ideas as far as you can take them and pass the ball. That's one of the things you'll learn in one of the administration classes. You'll learn how to build teams that can take an idea from conception to completion by knowing who to hand the project to and at what stages to hand it to, and to feel good about it. Don't worry about your weaknesses unless they are in fact moral or ethical flaws. It ain't a big deal. Build a team around you so that you can still accomplish your goals. Let's talk a little bit about the S. The S stands for steadiness. People with S or steadiness dimensions of behavior tend to emphasize achieving stability and accomplishing tasks by cooperating with others. S is really like a democratic process. The two people that, if I's have a problem, they're going to try to involve other people, but it's not a big deal. If S's have a problem, they are usually the ones that unintentionally create rebellion in churches and in businesses. Because an S will not go to somebody and be direct and just say, this is my problem, let's talk about it. They will try to get a group of people that feel the same way and want to take that group and talk about it. Now, it is not their intention to cause a big rebellion. It's just their intention to make it safe for them. They're not the only one and this sort of thing. But what they don't realize is because of their refusal to go be direct and up front, they tend to create really sometimes incredibly rebellious situations. Here's the thing about a D. If a D decides he's going to take over, you don't ever have to wonder. Because a D will just stand up and say, I'm taking over. I mean, really, you always know where a D is, but you don't ever know where an S is. So they try to get people together, and to see there's a strength or a weakness. That can be a strength because they will pull people together. See, it doesn't matter what you do. There's certain environments, it can be a strength. Certain environments can be a weakness. So S's can get people working together and create stable, predictable environments and help people feel safe. Yes. That's right. Absalom, I have to look a little closer at Absalom's profile. That would be an S tendency, but I can't say for sure that Absalom was an S. Now S's are great at calming people down. They tend to be more patient, way more patient than D's and I's. They're good listeners, and they are loyal. But now stop and think about it. If I'm a good listener, S's get in trouble in counseling because they will let the other person ramble on and on and on and on. So S's have a tendency to be dumping grounds for other people's problems. So their strength in listening becomes a weakness when they overuse it. And, like we said in the very first class, all a weakness is the overuse of a strength. It's like a D, it's a strength for him to take charge unless he takes charge all the time. And then it becomes a weakness, see? The overuse of being a leader is you become a controller. The overuse of being a good listener is you become a dumping ground. Now, there's an interesting factor in S's loyalty. Like a D will be fiercely loyal until it is not logical and it interferes with results. And because D's are objective thinkers, they can be loyal to the person while not being loyal to their cause. See, I can totally disagree with you and even be against what you're doing. And as long as you do not violate my basic values, and my basic values come down to this: if you will hurt or use other people for personal gain, I have no use for you and I'm done with you. And I'll just tell you this, if you ever think I'm blowing somebody off, and I very rarely ever come out and say it when I'm blowing somebody off, but if you ever think I'm blowing somebody off, that's usually the line that they've crossed for me. And when they cross that line, it's sort of like, you know something? I'm not against you. I'm not going to seek to hurt you. But stay away from me. Stay away from the people I value, because I will not passively let you continue to hurt and use people. So, but up until that point, you can do about anything. I can stay all right with you because I don't reject you as a person just because I reject what you're doing. Now, S's, their loyalty, though, like I said, their loyalty is more, I have to accept the whole package. I can't reject what you're doing without rejecting you as a person. But here's what gets S's in trouble on their loyalties. S's are fiercely loyalty, but they want to choose the loyalty. You say, what does that mean? Well, it's sort of like this. I had a secretary that worked for me one time, and we used to have our own print shop, and we had a couple of printing presses and all that kind of stuff, and so we used to print all of our tracts, all of our magazines, all of our books right here. So I had a pressman that would come in every day at about 5, and he would work till about 11 or 12, sometimes 1, and I knew the guy. He filled out reports and all that kind of stuff about his work, and that's the way we managed him. So she began to feel like he wasn't producing ample amount of work. And so out of her loyalty to me and to the ministry, she started going out and checking on him at night. The problem is she started coming to work late. So I sat down with her and I said, now listen, and in those days, we had so much going on that we used to actually have to have a staff meeting every morning. Matter of fact, actually, we had 2 staff meetings a day in those days. And we'd have a major staff meeting every Monday morning. We'd have a brief staff meeting every single morning, and then we'd have about a 10-minute staff meeting after lunch, because we had so many publications and things going out that you just couldn't fall behind. Everything had to be right on the money. And we had a smaller staff, so we had to be way more efficient. So if you weren't there for that morning staff meeting, you weren't in touch with where we were going for that day. And so I said, look, you've got to be here now. And she said, well, Jim, but now listen, The only reason I'm late is because I'm putting in all of these extra hours over here, and I'm not charging you anything for it. I'm doing this to help you and help the ministry. I said, well, that's good, and I appreciate that, and if you want to do that as a volunteer, you can, but your job description says these are your responsibilities. So what she did is she chose her loyalties independent of what I said was important. And see, that's where that subjectivity of an S gets them in trouble. I'm going to establish what feels like it should be important instead of what the person I work for says is important. And so, I ended up having a fire. And, of course, she thinks I'm the meanest person in the world, but it's real simple. You got a job description. I need you to do this. I don't need you to do this. You're costing me more money by not being here in staff meetings than this guy costs me even if he goofs off half the time out there. And so because she could not adjust her loyalties beyond what she felt they should be, it cost her a job. So S's get hurt many times because they will be loyal to somebody, but they're loyal to the part of it they feel they should be loyal to. And in the end, then they feel like, man, see, I am loyal. I was laying my life down for this person, and look how I got hurt. But the question is, were you working your priorities, or were you, if you worked for them, or if you were wanting to help them, were you in fact working their priorities? So S's, they're steady, they're calm, they're patient, they're loyal. And they can be counted on to try to bring conflicts to peaceful resolutions. But let me say this, and this is a character issue, it's according to which side of the character you're on. S's tend to always go for who they perceive to be the underdog. And again, that is a subjective decision. Maybe the underdog is an underdog because they always do things wrong, because they always violate. But that S can move into a real sympathy mode with them and suddenly start siding with somebody just because they're an underdog. Now, these are people in your organization that can be counted on to know and value procedures and precedents used to accomplish tasks and decisions. S's become incredible specialists. They do not mind doing a task over and over and over and getting really, really good at it and staying at the same task. See, D's don't like to stay on a task. I's don't like to stay on the same task. They want to be mobile. They want variety. And so they tend to not become good specialists. Now, they like to do things in a way that has been established and have been proven to work. So S's like to work on previously established precedents and procedures. But now what's interesting, a lot of people complain. As a matter of fact, D's complain that you can't get S's to take risks, but you can. I've never had any trouble getting S's to take risks as long as you give them ample amount of time to prepare for it. S's don't mind taking risk with you. They don't mind facing challenges. You just have to give them the time to process it, and they have to see, they have to see the value for it. So, what do you think is motivating someone with S behavior? I mean, there's, what's motivating them is steadiness, safety, predictability. These are tend to be motivating factors. They're motivated by infrequent change. They like for things to stay the same. S is like sincere appreciation. It's interesting. You want to express appreciation, you better find out how to do it. If you give an S appreciation, if you express like an I, all an I really wants in appreciation is a cheerleader. Just yay, and that's all right. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'll tell you something. If you do that for an S, they will despise it, and they'll despise you because they want their appreciation to be very sincere. So when you express appreciation to an S, it needs to be personal, it needs to be one-on-one, and it needs to be very specific about what it is you appreciate, why you appreciate it, the value it brings to the organization or to the family or that sort of thing. Otherwise, if you're too general, then it doesn't seem sincere. It doesn't seem legitimate. D's are sort of that way. D's don't like, D's want logical appreciation. I want to be recognized. I want to be valued. I want to be respected, but I don't need all this hype. And the same way with a D. If you express appreciation to a D or an S the way you would with an I, it's actually offensive. So sometimes we're trying to do something for somebody else's benefit, and we end up offending them. Our intention was good, but see, if we didn't do it in a way that they valued, then it blows up in our face. S's are motivated by cooperation, by the use of traditional methods. So someone who favors steadiness will probably fear loss of stability. They're not going to like the unknown. They don't like things too unpredictable. D pastors are a nightmare for S's. See, here's what D's do. D's think about things sometimes a long time before they ever say it. But somehow or another, D's think that because they've reached a conclusion that they should just be able to make a statement and everybody out there would say, oh, okay, I'll go with you. And so D's tend to make announcements about what's going to be done rather than preparing people and using persuasion and taking your time to take people through change. I was doing this leadership thing in Kansas City the other day, and one of the questions that came up, they said, and I was sharing with them how that we moved in here and we remodeled 25,000 square feet of this building in 2 weeks, and that by and large, other than just a couple of little situations, it was really pretty low stress. It was high activity, low stress. And I had people leaving here every day saying, man, thank you so much for letting me do this. I can't believe how smooth this went. We had 2 or 3 contractors that filled in the gaps for what the volunteers couldn't do. Everything was scheduled very well. And it really, really went just pretty much like clockwork. And this pastor says, I don't understand that. She said, because I can't get, she said, I'll announce something. I can't get anybody involved. I said, exactly. You announce it. Just announcing something does not give people time to process it. They got to have, what's the value in doing this? Why should we make this sacrifice? Why should we get involved? What's the benefit that's going to come to us as a church or as a business or as an organization? In other words, and then you got to give people time to process, just like you had time to process. But see, D's want people to just take them at their word. So they think, I've thought it through. You should trust me enough to know that. And here's another thing is like D's, particularly if they don't have good character, if they don't see results real quickly with something, they'll just start something new. And so D's can start a lot of things that they never finish. And so eventually your S's are going, why get involved? It's just going to be another something we're going to start that we're not going to see through to the end. So D's can really be a torment because they don't like it to be unpredictable. They like to know that this is where we're going. This is how we're going to get there. And if there's going to be changes, we'll have time to work it out. So when observing someone's S behavior, you'll notice patience. You'll notice that they like to be a team player. You'll notice a methodical approach. They'll tend to be easygoing. Unless you get them, unless you get them in a wad. If you get an S in a wad, you can tell when they buck up on you. You know what I mean? It's like a camel walking through a desert with a hump on his back. And, really. And the thing is when an S bows up on you, they are not going to be the ones to initiate working it out. You'll have to be the one to initiate working it out. They're not going to. Unless they've developed themselves and have learned to feel comfortable and stepping out of their comfort zone. What S's do what I call saving stamps. And when I grew up, I don't know if you all remember the stamps that they used to say, like you go buy groceries, you get top value stamps or green stamps, and you lick those stamps and stick them in a book, and when you got enough books, you could cash it in. That's what S's do. They just put them stamps in a book, and they save them all up, and one day they will blow their stack on you. They will go totally out of control. Now, D's are to the other extreme, and that a D that's out of control is just everything. So neither extreme is the appropriate extreme. But if you're managing an S, when you begin to see them go internal and stop communicating, you need to approach them and you need to begin working this out. because S's do tend to internalize. So people with S tendency usually do not like to be put on the spot. So the last thing they would like for me to ask them is to come up with their limitations and tell the group. So I'm not going to ask you to do that. I'm not going to put you on the spot. So let's talk a little bit about the limitations of those who have a high S behavior. Maybe they would include being overwilling to give. So S's sometimes give in, give up to avoid conflict when they really shouldn't. And they might tend to put their needs behind the needs of others. Now the thing is, they would do that without communicating it and eventually become angry about it. And say, you took advantage of me. Well, no, you never said. You get this a lot in marriage counseling. You get somebody that's a real high S. I remember I was counseling this guy one time, and he came to see me. He said, man, I've had all I can take. Can't stand this woman. I'm done. I'm finished. I said, now, so tell me what's going on. So he told me this stuff. I said, so now have you talked to her about this? Oh, yeah. I made this really, really clear. Well, before it was all over with, what we got down to is one time in 10 years, he made a indirect statement about some of these things bothering him. Now, you see, remember, S's think that all direct communication is mean. So they don't want to be mean. So they have to be angry to have direct communication. But here's a problem that S's have. You know, an S can say something so subtle and so indirect that nobody gets it. Now, in their mind, they have really stated the case. But particularly to an I or D, it's like the I or D didn't even know that they had an issue. So they'll put their needs behind the needs of others, and then somewhere they'll say, you took advantage of me. And you're like, what? I don't even know what you're talking about. Well, I did this and this and this and this. You're like, well, I thought you wanted to do it. No, I did that for you. It's like, ooh. So S's can really get in trouble that way. And sometimes the resistance to positive change. These are limitations. We all have limitations. We've got strengths. Remember we talked about the strengths, and the reason I'm doing this is because the S's in here are going to struggle, and you're going to remember that we talked about limitations and not strengths. S's are grudge holders. D's, if they're going to kill you. Here, see with a D, if a D, and we always knew this when I used to work in bars and stuff. You know, when a D comes in, he's going to shoot about 4 holes in his pocket trying to get his gun out. You know what's coming. You know, with the S, they're going to wait till you take a nap. And they're going to kill you in your sleep, and you're never going to see it coming. A C will just torture you for about a year with every detail of pain that you could possibly imagine. So let's look at the C, at the dimensions of the C behavior. Now the C, of course, is the conscientious, analytical, the detail-oriented. And their behavior tends to be characterized by attention to standards and details, analytical thinking, accuracy, and diplomacy with other people. Often they're uncomfortable with conflict and will deal with it indirectly. C's, interestingly, if a C is going to go into the control mode, they're going to do it by trying to control the standard of quality. You know, a D will just say, I want it done this way. A C is going to be, no, here's our definition of quality, and so it's indirect. So the C is never really challenging you personally. They're just holding this standard up here and saying you're not measuring up to the standard. So that's a C. So this is a person in your organization who may be frustrated with spending a lot of time on teams or in meetings. They are effective working in teams, but they do want some time to work alone and feel they are more productive that way. C's pretty much feel like meetings are a waste of time, and D's tend to do that too. I's enjoy meetings because basically they're just going to turn them into a gathering. S's enjoy meetings because it is going to give them a chance to connect with people and kind of bring about that camaraderie and the team spirit. C's don't like meetings too much because it's just a waste of time. Like, look, just tell me what you want, and in the end, I'm smarter than anybody in here anyhow, so I'm really the one that's going to fix all this. So S's can kind of tend to go there pretty quick. C's have a fear that working with a group will tend to lower the quality of the product that's going to be produced. And so C's are people who, by and large, most of their life have gotten acceptance by doing things right. So the fear of doing things below a certain standard and feels like personal failure or personal rejection. So they're going to want to work alone a little more, and they're going to, and if they start feeling like people on the team are costing them quality, they stop cooperating. Now, you tend to take that as, well, they don't want to be a team player. No, there's a whole other issue there, and that is the fear of the loss of quality. It's not that they don't want to be a team player. They just don't want the team to cost quality. It reflects on them personally if they're on the team. There could be 99 other people on the team, but in their mind, it all reflects on them personally. C's, well, anybody can be a leader. C's tend to be refiners more than leaders. They don't really like to be the visionary that comes up with a plan. They like for somebody to give them a plan, and then they can kind of refine it and fill in the gaps and make it a better plan. Now, those with C behavior are motivated in an environment where performance expectations are clearly defined. They want to know very specifically what you expect. D's and I's just give me generalities. S's, sometimes the goals don't have to be as clearly defined as long as the procedures are defined. Just tell me the path we're going to take to get there. I'll be comfortable with that. But the C's want to know all of the details. Quality and accuracy are valued, and if they don't believe that you have a value for quality and accuracy, they will walk on you. They'll quit on you. They don't want to be there. They feel very uncomfortable. They like an atmosphere that's reserved and businesslike, and they want standards that are articulated very clearly. Now, of course, you can go back and review all of this on page 7. It's good for you to write notes because it helps your memory, but you can review a lot of this on page 7 in case you miss a lot of it. Now, they fear criticism of their work. Now, see, this is another place where we get in conflict with somebody. If you go to a D and challenge their work, they'll say, "Show me a better way." If you go to a C and challenge their work, you got a fight on your hands. Because you see, D's are more objective. C's, let's don't go that way. D's tend to get their sense of worth and value from themselves. C's tend to get their sense of worth and value from their work. So a C would actually feel more comfortable with you questioning them personally than questioning the quality of their work. And that's why it's interesting. You'll get S's and C's that stay in abusive situations that a D would never stay in, but vice versa. A D might stay in an abusive situation that our S or C would never stay in. See, all because of what we value and where we derive our sense of worth. So when you go to a C and there's a problem, you got to be very careful in approaching that problem so that you're not attacking the quality of their work. Because they're doing what they feel like is the quality that they can do, that they understand that you want, and this sort of thing. And And so you have to be very specific with the C's. As a matter of fact, with S's and C's both, I do this with everybody really, but I do it more with S's and C's. When I sit down and start talking to you, I want to remind you of your value to the organization. I want to remind you of why what you're doing is important. And then I want to talk about what we can improve on and how we can make it better. And then I want to go back to why this is going to help the whole picture. Because I want C's and S's to look at and always remember how their part fits into the whole so that they don't just make this about them. So they can get very threatened if their work is criticized. They'll get very uncomfortable if there's any slipshod type methods that are going on. And they do not like situations that go emotionally out of control. C's don't like to cry in public, and they don't want to see anybody cry in public. I'll never forget, I had a staff member one time who was pretty high SC. And if anybody had an emotion, had a high display of emotion, he immediately lost value for them. Because he felt like that was really unacceptable and not professional, and became quite critical and saw it as a weakness. Now, those with C behavior are motivated in an environment where performance expectations are clearly defined. Like C's want to know every 90 days we're going to have a performance evaluation. I want to make sure. I want to make sure I know whether or not you like what I'm doing, whether or not it's meeting up to par. Because it's really interesting. Here's one of the things that's so interesting. All of us, and I don't know, I don't remember what all we're covering in these classes, but all of us have this tendency that the thing that we have to have becomes the thing that we fight against the most. See, let me show you. With S's always wants policies and procedures, but they forget to look at them. No, really. And you struggle with S's to get them to work the procedures almost more than you do anybody else. But they're the ones that demand, I got to have policy and procedures. C's are the ones that say, you got to tell me the truth. I got to know, is my performance good enough? Is it? And then the minute you say, well, honestly, it's not, man, they just lose their minds. It's like the I want everybody to like me, and I want you to approve of me. And it's like, well, I can only approve of you if you stop hanging at the water fountain and talking to everybody. So, the desire for socialization creates the loss of social approval. And same thing with the D. The D is, I want you to respect me. And then the D will run over you and lose your respect. And so what's really interesting is you find this paradoxical behavior in that the thing that we demand and say that we want based on our character. And see, this is where character comes into play. Based on our character and based on how well we know ourselves, it's always the things that we do in the extremes of our behavior that create the situations that we can't live with. Like D's, you know what a D's biggest complaint is? Being taken advantage of. That's a D's biggest complaint. Now, you know what a D's definition of integrity is? Lay all of your cards on the table up front. Well, what do you think's going to happen if you lay all your cards on the table up front with people that you don't know? The book of Proverbs says you're a fool if you tell everything up front. But yet the D says, no, I'm not being honest if I don't lay everything up front. Oh, yeah. So the C really, they want these meetings, but then they lose their minds if you don't approve of them. It's kind of, anyhow. So they tend to be cautious. They don't want to run too many risks because it's too much possibility for failure. They want to be precise, and they want your language precise. And they're the ones that say, now, what do you mean by that? Now, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? They're going to tend to be perfectionistic and factual. So the D is the one, sometimes you have to get together and say, you know something, this standard that you got is just unrealistic. A D will refine something, and then refine something, and then refine something, and then refine something, and it'll never get to the marketplace because they'll never stop refining it. That's a C or a D? I meant a C. Okay. And so many times the D has to walk in and say, give me the project. I am moving it to the next person. So you got to have a facilitator that knows how to move a project along. Otherwise, the C will never let go of it. It'll never get good enough for the C to do it. So the C behavior can also have limitations, just like all the rest of us. These might include being overly critical of themselves. Here's one of the things. C's struggle with self-criticism more than any of the other behavioral styles. And then they turn that criticism on other people, unfortunately. They have an inability to make final decisions, see, because they just want to keep collecting data and analyzing that data and try to get it too right. And they have to learn to work with other people that they trust that can say, this is far enough. You know, we got enough information here, let's go. And creativity can be hampered by the need to follow rules. You know, to a D, rules are just suggestions. To a C, rules are the law. And it doesn't matter if this is going to cost you your life. This is the rules. You know, it doesn't matter if anybody benefits from this. This is what we got to do because this is the way it is. So you know, C's can really struggle with the rules, and they need somebody to C's need people to remind them, look, rules change based on the goals and desires and the outcome. But somebody also needs to remind the D's. These are more than just suggestions. We didn't really just write these down to impress people. We do need to kind of consider these. So it's important to remember that things that we are calling limitations are also opportunities for change and growth. And these limitations arise from overusing our behavioral characteristics. And like we've said, all a weakness is the overuse of a strength. So what I want to do is I want to get to the place to where I am not living in these continual limitations that would come to me because of the fact that I am, in fact, continually overusing these strengths. Let me look at my study guide because we're just going to be out of time in just a few minutes. I think we've covered everything on this study guide. Yeah, I think we've covered everything on the study guide. We're not going to get quite as far as I'd planned to get today, but we'll probably find ways to make it up as we go along. But let's do this. Let's cut off the tape, see if you got any questions, because I think we've got 3 minutes left anyhow. Yes.
Isn't a lot like at the beginning of what you're saying? I was going to ask you about. It sounds like you're manipulating, like you're backing that person up that was coming after you, the lady.
Yeah.
So you know the way she is, so it's kind of like manipulating.
Manipulation.
Or not.
You know, manipulation is first and foremost when you try to get people to do things for your reasons. See, agape, if it values you, then it values your reasons. So now, with this woman that I would use this thing on to get her to stop this confrontation or to stop this conversation, the truth is, because she was so pressing and so persistent, my only other way to stop her would have been a confrontation that she then couldn't handle. So I wasn't manipulating her when I would do this, when I would step toward her and eventually she would just kind of freak out and say, well, okay, we'll talk about it later, you know. Really what I was doing is I was avoiding putting her in a conflict situation because I knew how she was. I knew she would not stop if I didn't answer her questions. You can become a master manipulator with this information. Yeah, the question is, are you going to use this because of your value for people? Are you going to use this to bring benefit to people? See, here's the thing with truth. This is why the church hates the truth. Y'all do know that the church hates the truth. The church hates the gospel. You say, oh, no, the church preaches. No, they don't. The church is scared to death of the message of faith righteousness. And without faith righteousness, there's not a gospel. Matter of fact, Paul told because the people that came and preached to the Galatians, they said Jesus is your Savior, and if you'll do the right things, God will heal you. If you'll do the right things, the devil can't get to you. Just basic charismatic word of faith doctrine. And Paul said, this other gospel, which is not another at all. And those are two different Greek words. One Greek word for another means another of the same kind. The other means another of a different kind. He says, this other gospel, which is not another of the same kind at all. He says, you've been bewitched. This was to control you. And you know what he said? And I don't want to take this too far, but you know something? He said, somebody preaches a gospel to you like this, let them be accursed. Let them live under the curse that they're trying to bring you under. He said, because it's not a gospel. He said, it don't matter if we or an angel from heaven preach to you a gospel that says you got to earn your righteousness and earn favor from God and earn protection from the devil. He said, it's not God. So Paul was really, really pretty adamant about that. But you know why the church hates the message of faith righteousness? Well, they lose control, but here's the deal. People could misuse it. See, truth always puts you on this borderline that you mean God loves me no matter what. I might use this to say I can sin and get by with it. And see, that's the problem with truth, because real truth always puts responsibility squarely on the shoulders of the hearer. And what the church would rather do is make it where you have no choices other than the ones we define for you. And so we have control of your life. You become bewitched. Any other questions? We'll give you a test. Yes? Don't worry about the motivation. Yeah, just don't even try to get there. Because, like I said, a lot of times they don't even know. I mean, was it the overbearing parent that they always had to be right for? Is it because they have a need to impress you? Is it because they're afraid they're going to be rejected? Is it because they're insecure about their job? I mean, you know what I mean? Don't even worry about what motivates them. Just determine how you're going to communicate with them. And, you know, many times, and, you know, I've done this with you. I've done this with probably a lot of people here. You know, somebody start coming up and just, like, give me these details. It's like, you know something? You know, all this is important, but really right now is not the time to talk about this. I just need to know this. And sometimes you just have to do that and let the person know, we can talk about this later, but right now I just need to know this. So, sort of like one time, I had this guy, these two guys working for me, and one of them was real detailed and one of them wasn't. And so I just needed the yard mowed. That's all I needed. So one of my maintenance guys we went out there, the lawnmower wouldn't work. And so this other fellow who was kind of a DI is out there. And so the more SC guy, he said, you know, when you store one of these lawnmowers over the winter and you don't drain the gas out, and he starts to explain all this stuff. And in a minute, the other guy said, I just want to get the thing started. I don't want to know how it works. And and that's kind of the way it is. I mean, he could have been a little bit more tactful, but see, that's the way it is. And sometimes you do, because of work, because of responsibilities, because of time limitations, you got to get somebody to cut to the chase. And you're not being rude by doing that. You want to do it as favorable and positive as you can. But, you know, if a person persistently does something that brings conflict into the environment because of their tendency, I'm still not going to go to why, as much as I'm going to sit down with them and say, now, do you understand the position that this puts me in with you? Do you understand that when you do this, this puts me and maybe the rest of the team in this kind of position, and this creates conflict, and I believe conflict is what you're trying to avoid. And so, you know, get a little dialogue going in, then that's where you just say, now listen, if you're doing this to make sure you're understood and to make sure that you don't get misunderstood, don't have conflict, I'm telling you right now, you'll have less conflict if you'll let up on these details. Or, you know, so you can go back to a person if it's overbearing, if it keeps causing problem, and talk to them, and they might say, well, I'm doing that because I don't want to be misunderstood. I'm doing this. And still, that's probably not the root reason. That's just the presenting reason. Yeah. You're not talking about their motives. Question. Yes. There are certain behavioral styles that tend to have inherent conflict. Oh, you're talking about internal conflicts. Yeah. Oh, hey, you want to see somebody that feels schizophrenic? ICs. I'm inspirational. I'm motivational. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, my God, I got to take care of all these details. Oh, my God. And then after a little while, it's like, oh, I can't stand these details. I'm inspirational again. I want to be around people. I want to be by myself. And so yeah, you can have internal styles that conflict internally, and as you go through this, you'll learn more about when you tend to shift. Like, I know when I'm going to shift. And because I know it, I can usually prepare for it. Every now and then I get caught off guard. Every now and then, something happens in your environment that you're not expecting, and all of a sudden, boom, and you realize, oh, God, I wasn't ready for that, and I'm not handling this the way I want it to handle it. But as you get to know yourself, you start realizing when you're going to be more D, or when you're going to lean more toward the I. And then you start preparing for it, managing for it, and reducing external and internal conflict. Here's your assignment for next week. Read the book of Proverbs in the Amplified Bible and write out every scripture that refers to words, lips, the tongue, the mouth, or anything that has to do with communication. This must be handwritten and legible. And I'm hoping that you'll meditate on this for about the next 10 years on a daily basis and look at the ones that tend to be affecting your life the most and identify your communication styles and see how that relates to your behavior pattern. Of course, you'll have your required reading and your review for test.